Herzlich willkommen beim Podcast Lasst die Kunden kommen. Für alle, die im digitalen B2B-Marketing mehr erwarten als die üblichen Weisheiten rund um Inbound-Marketing, Lead-Generierung und Demand-Generation.
So, welcome to the podcast Lasst die Kunden kommen. I'm Torsten Herrmann, CEO of Chain Relations in Germany. This interview will be in English, which is a premiere because until now, and probably most of the episodes are in German. But today I'm going to do an interview in English, and I feel pretty much prepared to do it because I did quite a couple of interviews for customer insights projects. But maybe some stuff will sound a little bit scripted because I'm really prepared to have this interview with Gia. So it's a special edition, and I feel very honored to have Georgiana Laudi, and I have to pronounce it correctly, from Forget the Funnel as my very first guest. Welcome, Gia.
Thank you so much for having me, Torsten.
Yeah, could you please introduce yourself and give us all an idea about your background and, of course, some stuff about Claire, who's heading the customer growth movement together with you?
Yes. Okay, so what would be the most helpful? I think probably starting with when I got started in marketing, which was about 20-ish just plus years ago, around 2000, 2001, 2002, when I started working professionally in marketing. Marketing meaning digital marketing. At the time, it was mostly about, websites and search engine optimization and social media marketing and conversion rate optimization and some of this stuff that didn't have those names back then, but all types of marketing for predominantly at the time when I first started, for like brick and mortar businesses. So, real businesses with physical locations, helping them sort of go from, exclusively offline marketing to also online marketing. So that was my focus for the first, I'll say 10-ish years of my marketing career, maybe a little bit less than that. And around 2008, yeah, that's right. Around 2008, things really shifted for me because I joined Twitter and discovered this whole local community of tech startups and just a very active, by today's standards of using Twitter, it feels a little bit strange to say I discovered the local community because we don't really think of Twitter as being very localized now, but back then it very much was. And we would, we had these tweet ups and Twestivals and all kinds of things that we did, to meet in person. And I was exposed to this really awesome community. And I started organizing local events for women in tech to help it, feel a little bit more accessible. And through that, I got, exposure to a lot of startups and software as a service businesses, so recurring revenue businesses. That really excited me because as somebody in marketing, I really did feel like recurring revenue businesses were the business model that marketing had a role to play even in post-acquisition. And I was at an event in 2012 where Dave McClure was explaining pirate metrics, the activation, adoption. I don't even remember what they are because I don't really believe in them inherently now. But at the time, what I was very excited about was that all these tech founders finally would understand the role of marketing even post-acquisition, and that marketing would have a seat at the table and yada, yada. Of course, 11 years later, that still isn't always the case, but I basically started working for, startups and SaaS companies, and I kind of never looked back because I just loved that business model. I was in-house for about 5 years in VP marketing roles and really loved the business model. But when I left my in-house role, I wasn't sure. I had just had my children, and I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to go back in-house and commute and do all that stuff. And I always knew that I kind of wanted to have my own business. So I thought that was my opportunity. But very quickly, I got hit with a slew of demand for somebody who had experienced that type of company in that rate of growth in a marketing role inside of SaaS, which is relatively a young sort of industry. So I happen to have a lot of experience in a quite, early and young industry. So that is how I met Claire, because I needed to partner up with other specialists and experts in marketing fields because I had so much demand. And then Claire and I connected. We launched Forget the Funnel together as a workshop series to help those in customer-facing roles like marketing at tech companies get a seat at the table, so to speak, get out of the sort of weeds of execution and start thinking more strategically and be taken more seriously and manage up and things like that. So we ran workshops together for, I'll say, about 2 years. And Claire comes from a customer research background. I'm always been a little bit more on the operationalizing of strategies. And that pairing actually works very well, particularly for people inside of technology companies that don't often get a seat at the table or who are inside of a customer-facing role that may be unfortunately thought of as, especially in marketing, like the arts and crafts department, like you make things pretty versus helping drive business decisions. And we knew that if we could help these folks inside of these practitioners come to the table with customer insight and customer data, that they could be taken a lot more seriously. They could build much more meaningful strategies, growth strategies around those insights, and feel more confident in their strategies as well. So since that sort of discovery and that melding of ways of working with Claire and I, we just sort of haven't stopped. We can't unsee it now. And we dubbed it customer-led growth, I'll say, and I think it was January 2020. We happened to be in person together in Florida and on a trip to a conference. And we, again, kind of can't unsee it. So that's kind of how, that's my background, long time in marketing. Claire as well was in-house in a marketing role. Her background actually, she needed to leverage customer insight to make decisions about product activation. So she sort of dove into the deep end of customer research. And I actually had a somewhat similar situation when I was in-house discovering Airbnb's customer journey map and how they operationalize the customer experience, and just the marrying of those two things. Yeah, just kind of became the way that we worked with companies together. And we did that for years until we eventually made a framework out of it, wrote a book about the topic, have been training others in it. Yeah, that's kind of the story.
Yeah, so maybe as a short disclaimer, I'm one of those people you trained in 2021.
Yes, you are.
And I became a certified customer-led growth consultant as one of the first, the only one in Germany. But
yes.
So I'm happy to say I learned a lot from you, even also after 20 years or so in marketing. It was a really tough training, but it was worth it. But the reason today we talk is the publication, of course, of the book, which is called like your company, Forget the Funnel. So what do you do at Forget the Funnel, and how do you help your customers, or respectively to all these trained consultants, how our customer-led growth consultants are helping companies?
Yes. So we do a couple of things. I would say the thing that we do that takes probably the majority of our time is supporting SaaS companies. So we work with recurring revenue businesses who are typically struggling with one of two things. Either they are looking for more scalable marketing strategies. So they are generally more product-led, less on the enterprise sales side, more on the lower touch product-led type of companies who have reached a level of product adoption and product market fit. So they have happily paying customers, but now they need to figure out how do they scale. And so they're looking to scale their marketing predominantly when they come to us. Or in another situation, another very popular situation, maybe even more often, is those companies recognize that they're not doing as good of a job as they could at articulating the value that they provide to customers. And so they sort of come to us knowing that one of these two things is off and that they need help with this. What we end up learning by working with those companies is a plethora of other opportunities, because that's the nature of customer-led growth. But generally, those are the problems that folks come to us with. And then the other part of our business is the community of which you are a part of. There are not very many certified consultants. There's, I want to say there's maybe 20 or so. There's very, very few. It was something we did in a limited time. There's not many folks that can say like you that you're certified consultants, so that's good. But we have a community of practitioners who are either in-house, or founders or consultants and service providers like yourself, who are sort of all believe inherently that you do not need to guess at what your growth strategy should be. The answer is inside the heads of your best customers. And it's just our job to pull out those answers from your, inside your customers' heads and operationalize them so that your team can build more effective strategies and more effective messaging and positioning as well. So it all falls under that umbrella, but we have a services side of our business. And then we also have a side of our business that is more about our community and training and things like that. And the book kind of, speaks to both of those things, but the book is about the framework itself, and it's meant to be a very practical step-by-step kind of guide so that even folks who, are not part of the community or don't get to work with us, or, somebody like yourself, Torsten, they would have an opportunity to learn what the framework is and decide for themselves if it's something that could work for them.
So let's dive deeper a little bit into the subject of customer growth and also forget the funnel, because most marketers actually would define themselves as funnel centric. And if you look at job ads, they look for lead generation experts and hardly going beyond that somehow. We ourselves do lead generation, for example. So in a way, we're also funnel centric. So why did you call it Forget the Funnel? What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, there's a few reasons. One of them, and maybe the easiest one to understand or sort of explain rather, is that with recurring revenue businesses, if you think about your relationship with your customers as being top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, right? So like awareness, consideration, purchase, you're missing the point, because recurring revenue businesses are based on a long-term, ongoing, valuable relationship with your customer. It does not end at purchase. There's a whole post-acquisition experience that needs to be optimized and, accounted for and nurtured and supported. So you might call that customer marketing, or you might call that customer education, or you might call it, expansion and monetization or upsell. But there is a post-acquisition relationship with your customers, again, especially with recurring revenue businesses, that the funnel does not take into account. And yes, I have seen the hourglass funnels, and even that I would take issue with for the second reason, which is they're very generic. So they treat all customers and all offerings and solutions exactly the same. Like all customers have a top of funnel, or all products have a top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. From a communication standpoint, in conversation, I still from time to time find myself using the terms funnel just for a point of alignment, because there's the funnel is ubiquitous with marketing. It's like part of people understand what that means. And so in conversation, sometimes I will still refer to it as, top of funnel or bottom of funnel, but I stop there. I would never operationalize around it because it is too generic. It assumes that all customers and all solutions are the same and have the same process of the customer experiencing the problem that you solve, discovering that you exist, making a purchase decision about your product, whether or not that is in a product-led, low-touch, or sales-led, higher-touch, more intensive business, buying decision, through to actual meaningful value within your solution or product, through to actual engagement, they've solved their problem, through to continued value being delivered, and even value growth or value expansion. The funnel does not account for all of those nuances. It's just too black and white and sort of rudimentary for the relationship that you have with your customers. Again, especially if you're optimizing those experiences for your customers. If you're thinking, MQL, SQL, and you have a generic definition of what an MQL and an SQL means, you are very likely, and in every scenario that I've seen, very likely not taking into account your customers' motivations, objections, anxieties, deal breakers it's just too superficial and it's too generic. And also the measurement tends to be very transactional for funnels as well. So this is where I pick a fight with life cycle, where it's, visitor sign up. I'm describing like a SaaS product here, like visitor sign up, a credit card entered, renewed or went from monthly to annual or something like that. And that's the measure of success is, do they hit these transactional moments with our business versus did they reach a moment of success in their relationship with us? Did they reach a moment of value where we're enabling them to make an informed decision, reach a moment of value, and be able to make an informed decision where they won't churn out the back door and cancel, but actually reach value and stay a high lifetime value customer. And so that's the bone that I pick with funnels and life cycles that leverage and rely on transactional measures of success.
Yeah, it's funny because, with all this inbound marketing and this switch like 7 years, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, people tried to get more customer centric, but that in the end, it was just sales stages. So it had this first approach, okay, that makes sense. But then it's all about, okay, what do they do in our environment and not what do they reach and what do they experience, which is really, really strange. So maybe to get a little bit more granular. So how do you get to the strategy?
Yeah. So, and this is a good question, and it's where things get interesting, right? As you know. So what the customer-led growth framework basically leverages is another theory that that's known as the jobs to be done theory. That basically this theory that your customers hire you and your solution to solve a problem. And really what the jobs to be done theory enables you to do, and if your research is following the jobs to be done theory, you will understand your customer at a level that is very different than with the more superficial level, like I was describing, because what jobs to be done does is sort of gets to the root of why people made their decision, not what decision they made necessarily, but why they made them. So you sort of get beneath the surface a little bit. So in the jobs to be done research that CLG leverages, it's really about understanding, what was going on in your world on the day that you decided you had to solve this problem, or, what was that moment that triggered you to seek out another solution, fire the solution that you were using then and hire a new solution? What was going on in your world, so that you really get at the essence of that pain, that struggle, and understanding the context in which they're making that decision. What is the solution that they're firing? What is it that they're struggling with? What is it about that solution that is failing them? Or what changed in their environment that led them to seek, a solution? If you think about it, even if you only learned that, even if that was the only question you ever asked your customers, you could do so much with that from a marketing perspective. But jobs to be done goes a little bit further than that. And we lean on the jobs to be done framework to go a little bit further than that as well, which is understanding, what was it about our solution that convinced you to give it a try? What was that sort of critical moment where you felt confidence to keep going? Like what happened? What were the specific parts of, in our case, product that convinced you to keep going with this? And then, all the way through to now that you have this solution in your life, what are you able to do now that you weren't able to do before? And so you sort of take the conjecture out of it and you really understand the root of why your customer basically started the search for a new solution, why they chose you, what was it that stood out about your solution to them, and then all the way through to, what is it about our product that had provided them that additional value, and what are they able to do now? And then we also actually take it a step further, which is like, what are your new challenges, so that we can learn about opportunities to even expand on the existing customer base. Because again, with recurring revenue businesses, we're always looking for, further expansion opportunities and value delivery. So one thing that I will say as I'm describing this sort of like documentary of how your customers met and fell in love with your product is that the source of this information is not potential customers. It's the customers who are already using your solution today and happy with your solution today. And that's a really, really critical component to this. So one thing that we get asked a lot when we're talking about this is like, well, what about exit interviews? And don't you want to learn from your customers who canceled to learn from them, what might have prevented them from leaving or things like that? And the answer is no, not yet, right? At the core of this is let's understand what the customers who are happiest, have a willingness to pay, have already proven that they get value and are happy, right, with our solution as it exists today. Those customers are already validated as being happy customers. So let's learn from them first, get the foundational understanding of what value do we bring to that customer, do that at a certain amount of scale, either with interviews or with qualitative surveys. And then once we have that foundational understanding, we can layer on other types of research like win-loss analysis and target market and brand awareness studies and things like that. So that foundational understanding of customers is really at the root of understanding what these sort of major milestones our customers take in their relationship with us. So the jobs to be done theory basically helps us with that. Like I said, we describe it often as like a documentary of experiencing the problem all the way through to singing your praises to their colleagues or to, others in the space or expanded usage, and then identifying what the key milestones in their relationship with us are. And then through the identifying of those milestones, we can start to build strategies about what does good look like for them at each of those milestones. And then we can start to optimize. So that's how the sort of research piece meets taking action around a meaningful strategy.
I'm happy that you mentioned interviews and surveys, because I feel like here in Germany, the mainstream approach is to sit down internally with marketing, sales, product, C-level, and to discuss how does the customer journey look like? Where are the touch points? And if they do interviews, then more to validate their assumptions.
Right.
But not to really go to the clients.
It's just so dangerous.
The clients are the experts in customer journeys.
Yeah.
They really know it best. So what do you think people miss if they try with this internal approach in comparison to going external and ask the existing ideal customers?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I did it at first too, right? You refer to those as like proto customer journeys or proto personas where basically you're guessing. And that's it. Like, why would you guess when you have customers to learn from? Also, if you're guessing and then you conduct research to validate your hypotheses, that's pretty dangerous because you will find what you're looking for. You can validate anything. You have to know what you're looking for and you will find it. With the type of research that, I'm describing here in terms of jobs to be done, you sort of remove all of those assumptions and ask a very specific series of questions that gets to the root of why people make the decisions that they make so that you're not part of the equation. It's not about, what features did you love? It's not about, do you use this feature more than that feature, or should we build XYZ? It has nothing to do with that at all. It's really, what's going on in your world that our, solution plays into, but you're not asking about your solution. You're asking about what's going on in their world. So it's very risky to do things that way. And also it's wasteful of time because you don't have to do that. The answers to your growth challenges, to the answers to your questions, basically about how to grow your company, already live inside the heads of your best customers. So why would you not just ask them?
Maybe because the concept of jobs to be done is not easy for a lot of people to really get into. Maybe do you have an example of 1-2 jobs that are typical?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily typical, but what I can do is maybe give an example of where, a company that we worked with Torsten, I'm sure you've heard this example before, but it was a MarTech software that we worked with. The reason that I tell this story is because it's so straightforward and it's such a typical story, and it's easy to explain. But in this example, basically, this company came to us investing heavily in marketing, spending on content creation, lots of lead gen, e-courses and e-books and ads and blogging and, leveraging all these different channels to drive more traffic to their website to sign up for their product. And did I mention ads? Spending a lot on ads and content creation, right? Driving up their output of content creation, spending a ton of money on the top of the funnel, and I'm air quoting here, top of funnel. And they came to us and they said, revenue was flat. Something happened. We've got a lot of happy, healthy customers, but revenue has been flat for, 6 months to a year. And everything we try is not making a dent of difference, and we don't know what's going on. And in this story, I also love that this story, we did it with surveys in only a couple of weeks. So we identified with this company, who are your 500, I think it was about 500. We found their 500 healthiest, happiest customers. Because in this case, they have a few thousand customers, but you can easily do this with interviews. We found their 500 happiest, healthiest customers. And we sent them a survey that basically ran through this series of questions, like I was just describing, exactly those types of what was going on in your world, what led you to choose us, what was it about our solution, blah, blah, blah. And open text field questions, nothing multiple choice, nothing like that. And we got about, I want to say about 50 or 60 really good quality responses, parsed those responses from the survey, and identified that there were two very different customers coming to this company. There was a vocal majority who loved their content, were, very happy, sung the praises of the customer success team, loved customer support, were very, very happy, very vocal, loved the content and the education that they were getting, but they were a big support burden, and they were not activating within the product as quickly as this other group, which was a smaller group, a little bit quieter, a little bit more sophisticated in terms of use case. They had already validated that this marketing strategy was going to work for them, and they needed to start automating the process. So this is a social media tool, basically. And the first group that I'm describing, they're trying to build their audience. So their customer job was something along the lines of, when I need to build my audience, give me a great marketing, social media marketing strategy so that I can, build my business. I don't know exactly what the job statement was verbatim. The other group was, when I need a way to automate my processes and lower the burden on me directly influencing and spending time week over week, provide me with a system that allows me to feel confident about the strategy and focus elsewhere in my business. So those are the two customer jobs. And that first customer job was a way bigger, higher burden on customer success. They were less successful when they were activating in the product. And the second job was quieter. They didn't get in touch. They weren't as needy. They activated more quickly. They stuck around for longer. And ultimately, when we ended up parsing them in this way, we could see the LTV was also higher with that second group. And so that company, this whole time, had been actually, with their content, attracting that first customer job, almost more so than the second customer job, but they thought they were serving both at the same time. So they just didn't have an intimate enough understanding of their customers. And when they shifted their messaging and positioning over to that automators, that second customer job, their sign-up rate on their website, with only 3 pages updated, their sign-up page on their sign-up on their website went up 90%. But the really interesting part of this story is that their trial to paid conversion rate also increased 40%, and we didn't touch anything other than 3 pages on their website. And that is a very typical situation where a company believes their customer is solving one job, but actually their happiest paying customers are solving another job altogether. And they just didn't take the time to ask or learn or prioritize and think about their customers through that lens. And so that's a very typical situation, and it happens all the time. So hopefully that is a helpful story for articulating like how customer jobs can help understand the value, who your best customers are, and what actually matters to them. Because those two things, you can look at all the Google Analytics, you can look at all of your heat maps, you can do all the heuristic, optimizations of your website. It will never tell you, that data is never going to tell you who your best customers are and what really matters to them. The only way to do that is to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So when is the right moment to do a CLG project? When you plan a product, or when you launch it, or when it's already in the market, when you're frustrated? What's the right moment?
I mean, I joke and I say yesterday. Generally, it is easiest, and it's going to stand to reason, right? It is easiest to leverage CLG when you have happily paying customers already, because you've got customers who have already validated that they have a willingness to pay and they're happy. Right. If you've got 10 disgruntled customers, that's not okay. That's not a good situation. That's not what I'm describing here. If you're pre-revenue, or if you're in that situation, it's still possible to leverage CLG, but the research methodologies that you're going to leverage would be a little bit different. You're going to be doing target market research, not customer research. There's going to be more hypothesizing around, what the value really is. There's going to be more testing and validation needed, as opposed to somebody's in a situation where they have happily paying customers. Even if you have 20 happily paying customers, you have something to work with. So, and I would say that's the situation. That should be the trigger moment where you say, I have happily paying customers. Now it's time to figure out how to grow this thing and find more of them. And I think every CEO or founder or product manager or product owner or marketer is thinking in that way. So now that's the moment.
So you work mainly with, or almost always with, software as a service providers.
Yeah.
Is CLG also suitable for other companies with other business models?
Yes. So that is our background. Claire and I both come from, I don't want to say technology backgrounds because we're not technical, but we love the technology space, the tech space, and the startup space, particularly because we have a passion for helping customer-facing practitioners inside of those companies, like I was mentioning in the beginning, sort of get a bigger seat at the table, be seen as strategy drivers and drivers of revenue. We have a passion for helping those people, make better decisions, be taken more seriously, make higher salaries, provide more value to their companies. So that is where we focus, but CLG is absolutely applicable in other situations. Claire has worked with nonprofit companies before, where she's helped them. We apply CLG to our own service business. We've done that a few times. We know people have used CLG for e-commerce and D2C, because even in e-commerce and direct-to-consumer products, recurring revenue is also the name of the game. So any recurring revenue business benefits, especially. And I say that, and I think we would be hard-pressed to find a company or a CEO that doesn't think about their business as a recurring revenue business in some capacity. So, to that, I would say, yes, absolutely. Continuing to deliver value, having long-standing relationships with your customers or your clients is kind of always the name of the game. Given that, yes, CLG is applicable.
Yeah, from my experience too. I mean, we work with consultancies, like management consultancies, and there you see the recurring model is just one project after the other, but their goals, their motivations are basically the same. And so over time, they develop, it's like a recurring model, but of course it is not, because it's project-based, but it's still...
But it's recurring over time, right? It's, there's a continuous value creation and value delivery as part of that relationship with the customer, and for that situation, which again, I have a hard time imagining any business that only wants a customer to purchase from them once, right? So Yeah, it's very applicable. It's just a matter of, when in doubt, the name of the game and the North Star to focus on is always what is most appropriate and most effective for our ideal customer. That's it. That's the essence of CLG. Pulling that, operationalizing that, making customer understanding, customer empathy, and customer value delivery central to how the business operates, tying customer value to business value in every opportunity possible. In SaaS, we often refer to that as a value metric, where it's that piece of your product that simultaneously provides value to your customer and your business. You're always looking for that value metric. Every business has that. There is an essence there where you can tie your customer value to your business value. You're always looking for that. There's a way to operationalize that and help your team have higher customer empathy, higher customer understanding, and provide more value. When you help your customers or your clients win, your business wins. That's the name of the game for CLG.
That actually brings me to another question, because you talk in a different way about KPIs. So there should be customer-centric and not the typical vanity metrics. Maybe you can say a few more words on that?
Yeah. I would look to you for maybe to answer that from a consultancy sort of standpoint. But if I put a technology, a software product in my mind's eye, to answer this question, I was describing earlier these transactional moments, like sign up and enter a credit card, very transactional, void of any sort of value delivery. It is, and it happens so often. It still boggles my mind that we're customer led, we're customer driven, we love our customers, but the team is measuring their success based on just blatant transactional moments that have nothing to do with value delivery to the customer. What we try to do with the research is match what customers say is valuable to them to the specific parts of the product that deliver that value, or the product attributes that deliver that value. So an example, I'll use the example of the company that I was just referring to, the marketing technology. Let me think. So what customers said was valuable to them was, what those best customers said was there was a system. It was systematic. And we knew that the systematic part, so they said that was valuable to them. They wanted a system to follow. They didn't want to have to think. They wanted something to tell them what to do. And the product attribute that told them what to do or prevented them from needing to do much thinking was actually this automation setup. And so we could tie customers getting that feeling of, systematizing their business to setting up an automation. And so we knew that helping a customer get to first value would be to see that automation and set up their first automation. So our measure of product activation became setting up their first automation, not at credit card entered. And then we also knew that customers who were happy lifers, like high lifetime value, would never cancel or quit. We knew that those customers had a minimum amount of automations set up, plus a minimum amount of integrations with their other tool sets. And I want to say there was something else too. I can't remember at this exact moment. I think it was about content, but it was basically a combination of product usage where we could say that customer is a happy, healthy customer. And if they ever stop using the product in this way, we know that they're a potential churn risk and we should be proactive in our outreach to them. So what these KPIs do is they help us understand if we're getting our customers to a moment of value. But on the flip side of that coin, they also help us identify customers who didn't get to that moment of value so that we can be proactive in how we reach out to them and how we, try to support them to get back in, whether or not in an onboarding experience or in a customer experience that might be a flight risk. Instead of sending them, hey, you should upgrade from monthly to annual, or you should try this add-on. If they're a flight risk, can you imagine that customer experience? We've all experienced that, right? Where we're not actually that happy with a product, and then they're trying to sell us other things. That's not a good experience. If I'm a flight risk, you should be offering to help me or giving me other information or other, education or further support to help me get more value or receive value again from your product, not sell me other things. So that's the other thing that the KPIs do is they help us identify, they help the team identify how good of a job are we doing at helping our customers get to a moment of value. On the flip side of that, if anybody is not getting to those moments of value after they've been, nurtured in that way, we can be proactive in helping them, re-engage them, or what we sometimes call as like win back campaigns. But then furthermore, we can identify once they do hit those milestones that they're ready for the next milestone. They're ready for whatever, product adoption or features might be a little bit more advanced. So a very typical thing, especially in tech, is that we throw all the tools in the toolbox or all the toys in our toy box at customers as soon as they sign up, and we completely overwhelm them and they drop out, and 70% of people never come back a second time. So what CLG does, and thinking about KPIs in this way is helps us figure out what actually matters to them in what order, so that we know what to introduce in what order and not overwhelm, and then be a little bit more strategic in, some of the more advanced features that we might introduce post activation, or even when they're a customer, to help them, use the product in more sophisticated ways and maybe even expand their usage. And that could be a monetization opportunity. So hopefully that answered your question, at least from a product standpoint. Obviously in a service provider situation, or, it might look a little bit different. I don't know what your experience has been.
Well, I think the funny thing is that these customer value metrics are very close to sales metrics, actually, also to product. It's just that marketing somehow always drops out of the game because all the other metrics are so easily to be acquired, and they change so much, and they are so common that somehow they always fall back into, website visits or
like vanity. Yeah.
Vanity stuff. Yeah. And at the same time, I think it's those metrics that make them credible, give them a chair at the table, like you said, because they start talking way more like sales things and way more like business things instead of their strange old metrics that other people can't really value.
Yep. 100%.
So I definitely think that CLG is a big strengthening program to marketing folks.
Yeah.
Because they can really know something that other people don't know, and they can get insights, and they can, it's just strengthening their backs.
Yep.
Which normally nobody does really.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for marketing to influence the larger business strategy and just think about their role in the business as more strategically and sort of operationalize it in a way that everybody can understand. So everybody understands that the relationship with customers is really important, right? Nobody would argue with that. And so CLG gives, if it's somebody in marketing that's leading it, but sometimes it's customer success, sometimes it's product marketing, sometimes it's product management, sometimes it's the founder themselves or the CEO, not often the CEO, but sometimes the founder at an earlier stage company or a COO, to sort of operationalize the customer experience in that way. It's hard to argue with delivery and operationalizing of customer value, because everybody inherently understands that that's the business we're in, is delivering customer value. And if we have an opportunity to measure it in a more meaningful way, why wouldn't we take that opportunity? Because those leading indicators of success influence heavily those lagging indicators of success, like revenue growth and, a more like expansion and monetization opportunities and LTV and things like that. So if your team can be focused on leading indicators of success, your lagging indicators of success like revenue will benefit.
For anybody who's new to the game, and I would like to come to an end actually of our podcast. So for anybody who's new to the game, what are the challenges they have, and how can they try to find solutions? And what should they look out for?
Yeah. So what I would say is, one of the easiest things to do would be to familiarize yourself with the framework. so that you can talk about it in a way that lines up with business goals. One of the biggest things that marketers, often fail to do is talk about their role in the company as serving into business goals. Always, always, always go back to business goals and how marketing is serving the business, not just serving marketing, not just serving signups or leads, but rolling into the larger business goals. So one thing that would be, I think, advantageous for folks, especially now that there is a book that exists, is read the book. It's really short. We purposely made it very, very accessible and short so that anybody could read through it from beginning to end and understand how this type of work can roll into those business goals and help the company achieve those business goals. Then I would say another thing that you might try to do is run a small research project, not to necessarily overhaul the customer experience, but to bring those insights back to the team and say, I've got some quotes here from customers who say XYZ about what led them to sign up and why we stood out to them as a solution. Again, hard to argue with that. So if you can run a small research project, even 10, 12 interviews or a short qualitative survey, and bring those insights back to the team, that's often a really, I don't want to say easy, because it's not easy to run customer interviews. I mean, Torsten, you know this well. There's a lot of skill there with customer interviews, but it's a relatively small scope project where you're not asking the company to like overhaul how it operates, but you're bringing those insights back to the team so that the leadership team can make a decision on whether or not they want to lean into this and start changing how they operate maybe and operationalize the customer experience and start applying some of these learnings so that you can validate them and hopefully get, it's one foot in front of the other, get a win, bring the insights back to the leadership team. If the leadership team, is excited by it or feels like there's new insight there that is applicable to what they're doing today, well, then you're going to get buy-in on trying something, right? And testing something. And then if you can run the test and then the test is, outperforms, then you're going to get buy-in on taking the next step, a little bit bigger. So take it iteratively, but I would say getting a solid understanding of the potential of CLG at your business is probably the first step. And then, then after that, adding and iterating. I guess one other thing that I will say is finding a partner internally. So anybody who wants to do this themselves internally, finding a partner internally, maybe in another department that could help look at the customer experience from another lens. So if you're in a marketing role, maybe somebody in customer success, or if you're in customer success, maybe somebody from marketing or somebody from product, depending on the company, or somebody in sales that you can partner with on this. That will go a long way to getting buy-in and to getting some wins under your belt to then accelerate and get to be able to get more resources, basically. Yeah, I will say that the hardest part is definitely the customer interviews. Torsten, I know you know this. Running customer interviews, it can be hard. There are resources online. Obviously, the book can help. Outsourcing to consultants helps a lot too, because it's hard to read the label from inside the jar. You mentioned, Torsten, that a lot of people, they make some decisions and then they use research to validate their own hypotheses. That happens all the time. So using a third party to conduct your research can be really helpful, because you sort of, your customers may feel like they can be a little bit more honest, or, you just remove the margin for error. So even if you only outsourced research, I think, you could be well served by having a third party conduct customer interviews. But other than that, it's absolutely doable. It's just a matter of getting buy-in and prioritizing it on your calendar, really.
Yeah, starting to talk with customers is the first step for marketing.
Yep.
And you definitely get an idea.
Yeah.
And then doing customer interviews, I think it's not, of course, some experience is necessary. I think the hard part is to analyze this huge pile of information. Mm-hmm. But once you get the job or the jobs of the customers, then everything gets clear and transparent. And then everything gets easy suddenly. And
true.
Questions get answered that you never understood, probably didn't see before. It is some investment in time, money, whatever, but it makes life so much easier in the end.
Yep.
Because whatever you you just had a feeling about suddenly gets clear and transparent, and also you can talk about it then internally, which was really hard before.
That's right. 100%.
Great. So thanks a lot. I think that was awesome. I think everybody who listened to this podcast will have a sound idea now of what customer-led growth is. I can only recommend to get a copy of the book. It is available also as a paperback, still a bit tough to get, but
don't get me started.
I've got one. So thanks a lot. And I'm happy to talk to you again. And I know that will be pretty soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Torsten.
Thank you.
Schön, dass Sie heute eingeschaltet haben bei Lasst die Kunden kommen. Sollte Ihnen der Podcast gefallen, freuen wir uns über eine 5-Sterne-Bewertung. Dies hilft anderen, diesen Podcast auch zu finden. Wenn Sie Fragen, Anregungen oder Themenvorschläge haben, kontaktieren Sie uns gerne über www.chainrelations.de. Chain Relations in einem Wort. Sie können sich direkt mit Torsten Herrmann auf LinkedIn vernetzen oder ihm folgen und dort an spannenden Diskussionen mit ihm teilnehmen. Torsten schreibt man ohne H und Herrmann mit 2 N. Jetzt sagen wir Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen, bis zum nächsten Mal.